Today I am meeting with Dawn Kernagis. She is a research scientist in the area of human performance optimization and risk mitigation for operators in extreme environments such as those working undersea, at altitude, or in space. Dawn has lived underwater, runs her own podcast, is in the Women Divers Hall of Fame, and is the recipient of the 2018 Undersea and Hyperbaric Medical Society's Young Scientist Award, just to name a few of her many accomplishments. We are extremely fortunate to have her join the UNC Neurosurgery faculty to work with our team on neuroprotection research for humans in high stress environments. So welcome, Dawn. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you got on this career path and why this research area interested you?
Yeah, so this is actually my second career. My first career was in the diving industry or the scuba diving industry. And I worked on a variety of underwater exploration projects. So, for example, underwater cave exploration and deep shipwreck exploration. And through that work, I had the opportunity to collaborate with individuals who are really pushing their physiological and physical extremes due to the unique stresses of these extreme environments that they're working in. And so that's where I initially developed my interest in looking at how the body responds to extreme stresses and extreme environments. Obviously, that led to being interested in looking at ways to protect the body from these extreme stresses. And so that's what led to me going into research. And it started off as a grad student, and I was funded by the Office of Naval Research to look at how the body responds at the genetic level to some of these extreme stresses, especially in divers. And then that led to my postdoc and ultimately to the work that I'm doing today. Why the brain and the nervous system specifically? I just find them fascinating, and obviously it's critical that you maintain optimal brain health and brain resilience and also nervous system health and resilience if you're going to look at operating and maintaining overall wellness when you're working in extreme environmental settings. So why clinical application? Obviously, there are a lot of ties that cross over to what happens to the brain and nervous system in the extreme environmental setting to what happens in the clinical setting. And I actually saw a fair bit of that when I was working on my postdoc in neurology and neurocritical care at Duke University. And so I had the opportunity to look at neuroprotective strategies that could potentially be applied for extreme environmental exposures, but obviously could have huge implications when it came to clinical application.
Tell us a little more about what happens to the brain and the nervous system in a high stress environment.
Yeah, so it kind of depends on which extreme environment you're talking about. So, space flight, you're exposed to a variety of different conditions such as microgravity or elevated carbon dioxide in the living environment, and also potential exposure to radiation. And all of those can have huge impacts on brain physiology and function, and we're still learning a lot about how they impact the brain and the nervous system, especially for long duration space flight. For altitude, the big consideration is exposure to low levels of oxygen or hypoxia. So, again, huge implications when it comes to brain physiology and function, and also potential development of conditions such as acute mountain sickness or high altitude cerebral edema. And both of these conditions we don't know a lot about or the best ways to protect against. So, these are big areas of research for altitude physiologists. And then divers are exposed to a variety of stressors as well that can impact the brain and nervous system. So just being immersed alone actually has an impact on brain physiology and nervous system function. But divers who breathe high pressure oxygen can develop a condition called central nervous system oxygen toxicity. This is a potentially deadly condition because divers can potentially develop seizures underwater, which is not a good thing. So definitely something that we want to learn how to protect against. Divers can also develop nitrogen narcosis, so this is experiencing a narcotic effect in response to breathing high pressure nitrogen. And divers can also potentially have damage to the brain and nervous system in response to bubbles that form in the blood or tissue in a condition called decompression sickness, otherwise known as the bend. So across all these different extreme environments, there are a lot of different unique stressors that we want to learn how to protect against for individuals that work in these extreme environments.
Can you tell us more about the work you will be doing with UNC Neurosurgery in your new position?
Working on neuroprotective strategies for individuals who are potentially going to be exposed to high physiological stress. So, individuals who are going to be working in these extreme environments that I've been talking about, that would be one. But then also looking at neuroprotective strategies before exposure to things like anesthesia or chemotherapy or even pre op or radiation. And even for individuals who are going into settings where they are at a high risk of potential concussive injury. So, for example, looking at neuroprotective strategies for athletes or even those in the military. So that's going to be kind of the gist of the work that I'll be focusing on at UNC in the Department of Neurosurgery.
Can you tell us a little bit more about your podcast and kind of why you started it and what it is?
Yeah, so STEM Talk is the brainchild of the director of the current institute that I work at, the Institute for Human and Machine Cognition. And as I transition to UNC, I'll still maintain an adjunct affiliation with IHMC so that I can still be involved with this podcast, which I'm really excited about. So, the overall focus of STEM Talk is interviewing the most interesting people in science and technology. And what's cool about it is that we have interviews with people who are really pushing the limits of their respective areas of research and respective areas of technology development, but also who have fascinating life stories. So we don't just dig into the research, we also dig into their life story and lessons learned and how they got to where they are, and if they could do it all over again, what would they do? Just things like that. So it's a fascinating opportunity to talk with experts from a variety of different fields. So I've had the chance to interview Apollo astronauts and oceanographers and physicists and individuals who are leading different areas of medical research. So, absolutely fantastic opportunity. And it's just great to get a chance to provide a tool for outreach to the general public when it comes to science and technology.
UNC Neurosurgery interested you and ultimately made you decide to move back to North Carolina for this position.
So yeah, I'm actually a North Carolina native. I grew up here. I moved here when I was 8 years old. I spent the bulk of my life here, and that's a great thing. I love this state, and I'm really, really happy to be back in North Carolina. This is where I should probably also confess that I did my undergraduate at North Carolina State University, so I'm a Wolfpack alum, and I also did my PhD and postdoc at Duke University. So I like to think that I'm just completing the trifecta. But in all seriousness, UNC has an incredible national reputation, an incredible international reputation. So that in and of itself is a huge pull to come to UNC. But beyond that, just interacting with individuals in the Department of Neurosurgery and also other departments that for potential collaborative projects, I've been incredibly impressed with the enthusiasm and just the interactive nature of everybody in this university. So I'm just really excited to be part of this program and part of the team and part of the university moving forward.